How to increase your net worth by increasing your worthiness.
Ooh.
Yeah.
So this is a topic that you wanted to talk about.
It is.
How we can increase our net worth.
Yeah.
By
by increasing your worthiness.
Boom.
Yeah. So one of the things that has always eluded us, and it's always been an enigma to me, is like salespeople get stuck, right? They get stuck. I'm a little hot on the mic. Do you think so? No? Maybe it's just my headphones. Salespeople get stuck. So like, why do they get stuck? Why do they get to a certain level and then they don't go past that? It's like a glass ceiling, you know? And all salespeople experience this at one point. Very few people make it through.
Yes.
You know, we'll talk to agents that have been selling for 20 years and they're like, oh, I'd still do the same amount. I've talked to agents that have been selling longer than I've been alive. I'm like, where do you get your business? They're like, I just really don't know. It just kind of happens. I just kind of get it. I can do this over here and that over there. And then it just happens. Right. So they don't know how to increase their income.
Yep.
And they just get stuck. Or like, we'll have salespeople on the team, they'll hit a certain level and then just never progress beyond that. Like I was talking to one this morning. He's like, oh, I've just kind of been stuck here. And, you know, the most I've ever made with this and blah, 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 blah. And what happens a lot of times is what people do is they look at, okay, well, I just need to change the vehicle. Maybe I'll go be a mortgage broker or maybe I'll sell insurance, right? Like the grass will be greener over there, but it's never that. And when we had a small sales team, that was always my argument to you. I'm like, look, it's too hard to get them to increase their internal value. So let's just hire more salespeople, right?
Yeah.
But recently I was going down that path of self-study, and I realized that that's a huge component of it. Because I think there's only two ways to increase your internal governor of what you're willing to make or able to make. One is to get around people who are making a lot more than you, so that you can realize that there's nothing special about them. And then the other one is that process, the process of learning, implementing, winning or losing, and then repeating that process. One of the reasons why I love marketing is because it's so much like real life in that regard. You know, you put some stuff out there, you feel really good about it. You know, is this going to work? You got an ad and you got some words that you wrote down, maybe a video you created, and then it flops. You know, like the first time I made that first video, it took me all day, right? Like you still got blooper reels from it. And I was really proud of that campaign that we'd put together. And I thought for sure this was going to win. I'm like, people are definitely going to buy this. And then just nothing, right?
Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. So like most people, that's where they stop.
Yep.
You know? But we didn't. We just kept learning, kept going, kept, you know, more wax at the oak tree, right? And you just learn your way out of it.
And I think going specifically in marketing, something that I had to pick up, because I had only just focused on sales for the longest time, and then just like how to get more sales, like little things like internal email pushes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But when I really started diving into marketing, I remember this realization so clearly that it was like, oh, this is a continual process. Like you can't just let an ad run forever, right? There's
Right.
ad fatigue.
Well, especially in today's marketing, because social media, like people will just, ad fatigue is real.
Yeah.
You got to keep it fresh.
And there's so much attention. Like you hear people putting out content, and they're like, if you're putting out, 12 pieces of content, do 24. If you're putting out 24, do 100. Like there's never enough, because the way scroll happens now, it's just not what it used to be, where people would go back. Like there's so many posts and stuff going on that you just lose it, right?
Right.
And so you just kind of constantly have to put things in front of them and put them out there. But like learning all of that stuff, like I feel like in sales, like you kind of get a skill set and you can get to a certain level, and then it's like motivating yourself and like getting around other people, and you can learn a little bit more. But then there's like, for me, I got to a point where I was like, I feel like I know everything there is to know, and I could be a fucking guru if I needed to be.
Yeah.
But even then, like the minute you get to that point where you start thinking that way, you start going the other way.
Well, and what it boils down to, like we have a saying in my family, it's people can't stand the prosperity, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so they get to a certain level. If they don't feel like they're worth it, then they'll self-sabotage, and it'll manifest in all kinds of ways: procrastination, not doing the right things that they know that they're supposed to do, cutting corners that they didn't used to cut, right? And why? Well, it's because they don't feel like they should have that success. And sometimes it's not their fault. Sometimes it's the way they were raised. It's their beliefs that were installed with them about money. One of the ones that I always like to talk about is the term hard-earned money. Like, why does it have to be hard-earned dollar? Like that's like a program that has been spoken into you that doesn't have to be real. You think Warren Buffett's sitting around thinking about hard-earned dollars? You know what I mean? Absolutely not, right? So like, how do you shift that? How do you stretch that paradigm? And if you're geographically constrained, or you're the most successful person, right, that you're around, number one, go get around some other successful people. But like for our team, right, it's not easy to do that. So how do we help move that needle without having to move your body? And I think that's the key. And it's something that I'd forgotten about because it's been so long since I've been out of my depth in something. But that ability to learn, that ability to pour into yourself, to put the work in, increases your feeling of worthiness, which will manifest it out in increasing your net worth. And I think that is such an understated thing. It's something that I knew, but I didn't know that I knew. And now that I know, I just want everybody to freaking know, like, this is the process. And I'm not talking about learning just for the sake of learning, because that's boring, right? Like I can't do that. But learning on demand about something that you're doing every day, even if you don't think that it's something you're going to continue to do every day, because that muscle that you're building is something that you're going to use no matter what it is you're doing. And going through that process is a personal journey that you'll never lose by doing, right? Like I've prescribed to the team the 1357 plan, right? Take 13 minutes, 57 seconds a day, every day, to learn, right? Cut out that time from Netflix or video games or whatever you do in your spare time. You can do it in your car, right? And I learned that from my dad when I was a kid. It was W. Clement Stone's prescription for combined insurance, right? And you know the story. I'm like, why 13 minutes, 57 seconds? I've been doing it for like a couple months. He's like, it's a made up number. It's just to get you started, you know, but it's a good one, right? I still use it today. I'm like, all right, I'm going to just do, 13 minutes, 57 seconds of this, open this book, and then next thing you know, I'm 2 hours in, right? Yeah. But I can't overstate enough that process is the process of making you feel like you're worth the extra money, like you're worth the increase, you're worth the success.
Yes. And the things that I was bad at when I first came in and met Jay and Mike, and like got into this world where it's so crazy to me that these top agency, you put Ryan Reilly, you put Jay, Mike, you put all these people that sell hundreds of homes a year, do millions of dollars in commission, all that fun stuff. And there's like a very common thread between all of you of this like lack of ego, willing to learn from anybody. Like, just, I don't care who it is. Like, I'm gonna get, if you,
I'd prefer it's an expert.
right? But you can take away things from all situations, right?
Yeah.
Like in any situation, you can take away from a conversation that you had with a homeless person, right? And you could have some kind of wisdom that you take from it. Like, it's really unbelievable. And I had such an ego for a long time because, like, I thought that I like needed to be perceived a certain way, so I acted a certain way, and I thought that was like helping me, but it was actually really hurting me on like what I thought was possible and what rooms I'd be willing to get into and who I was willing to listen to. And like, if we had a scoreboard, I definitely wasn't winning, but I had to like puff up my chest and be like, no, I'm winning. And so I'd shoot down things. And
well, those are programs that were programmed into you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? At some point in your life. Yeah. And so I think one of the most insightful things about that in particular is Tony Robbins always says your story. What's your story? What's your story? Right? Like, most people aren't aware that they have a story.
Correct.
I'm guilty of it. Like, I was trying to shift my weight and change that. And my coach at the time was like, well, what's your story about weight? I was like, oh, crap. Do I got a story? Then I broke it out. I'm like, oh, I do have a story. And this isn't a good one, right? This is actually holding me back, Same thing with story about money. My sister, she was struggling. I'm like, well, let's talk about your story about money. She's like, I don't have a story about money. I'm like, yeah, I think you do, right? And it turned out it was the way to get money was slavery, right? Instead of freedom. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, if that's your attitude towards it, of course you're not going to have any. Let's reframe that story, right? And so I think that that's part of the process, but you don't even have to go that far in depth. If you can just hone this skill of learning about what it is you're doing every single day, implementing that, seeing the results, you'll compound those wins in a way that will reshape that story, even if you're not conscious of it or conscious of it being reshaped.
Yeah.
And I think that's the magic of it, that, again, I'm out of my depth in this particular topic that we're learning and looking to implement that I've never done before. I've seen it, but I didn't know what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And going through that process, I'm just so glad that I had that realization, and it hit me when it did. that is a huge component. That I think that by itself, even not being around peers that are making more money than you, will allow you to have the success. And inevitably, once you start to have that success, then you'll draw those peers to you.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and now, and I don't even know who I heard say this, but they were talking about how content now is so prevalent. So between YouTube, podcasts, and books, like you can for $15 or less, or more often free with podcasts and,
Yeah.
and YouTube, you can hang out with people that you never will be able to get into a room with for hours and hours on days. Like I've been listening to Alex Hormozy like crazy.
Yeah.
So like he's trying to build $1 billion thing right now. He's a few years younger than me, and I feel like he's like a few steps ahead of like where we're at. So
Yep.
everything he says, like I'm like, oh my god, this is so good. This is where we're at right now, and he's talking about it like this is such a great example.
Yeah.
But I feel like I get to hang out with him on a daily basis and during my
100%.
42-minute commute.
Yeah, my I know that's by choice.
It is.
My nephew, when he first came here, that was the first thing I asked him. I'm like, well, what are you doing to improve yourself? And he's like, well, what do you mean? I go to the gym, I eat healthy. I was like, nah, man, your brain, you know? He's like, well, nothing. And I was like, okay, do you need to get an Audible subscription? I'm going to give you some books to read. He's like, well, how much is that? I was like, well, it's 10, 12, 15 bucks a month. I said, do you have a Netflix subscription? He said, yeah. I said, cancel it. That ain't making you no money.
Right.
He's like, oh yeah. So he canceled it, right? And he went and got Audible subscription. And then every night I would have him check in with me the next day. What did you do to improve yourself? And on a scale of 1 to 10, what would you rate that effort? And so every morning it got to the point where I was almost ignoring him because he was so, like on point about it. And he kept sending it to me. And finally I went through and I scrolled through and they were all 7s. So I called him. I'm like, hey, why is it a 7 out of 10 as far as your effort? What's the gap there? He's like, well, I don't think anything's out of 10. I'm like, okay, so it's a story, right? But I was like, there's more. What is it? And he's like, well, I guess in order to make it a 10, I would have to do this. I'm like, okay, we'll do that. Next thing I know, I'm getting the text. It's 10, 10, 10, And then what happened through that was he was not doing well at sales. He was failing, right? So what happened with that is he got to a point where he started to have some success, right? And then he saw it working, and then it just creates that compound effect in addiction. Like, okay, I want to do more of this, and I just really believe that that's a key part of the formula that I've never heard communicated like that, and I've never really realized before. So again, I just want to tell everybody,
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like you can do it right now. Like
right now, net time, another Tony Robbins.
we might be helping do it right now.
Yeah, this might be a part of your process. You might be doing it and not even know it. Yeah. No extra time, right? If you're in the car, listen to a audiobook or a podcast or somebody specific that's teaching about what it is you're trying to get better at, right? So that you can implement that when you get to the office, when you get to work, when you get in front of the prospect, right?
We have a few good episodes that would be a good place to start.
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And just any habit that you try to create takes 30 days, right? So take 30 days, do it every day for 30 days, and I guarantee you'll see a shift in not just your success and results, but also in the way that you feel, right? Because the way that you feel is going to manifest into those results. And if you feel like you've put in the work, when you meet that prospect, you're going to behave differently. You're going to carry yourself differently. You're going to not have commission breath, right? You're going to be confident, and that's going to come through, and it's going to leak in the way that you talk. It's going to leak in the way that you communicate, not just the words, but all of it, the body language, the whole 9 yards. And it's going to make a massive shift in the way that you're able to achieve what it is you're trying to achieve. And it's the most fun. It's better than any video game.